Hey everybody, welcome back to Chris and Andrew Outside. I'm Chris.
I'm Andrew.
Today we're going to talk about Ellensburg Blues again. I know. But we want to talk about 3 C's: the cutting, cabbing, and I don't remember what the 3rd C is. So color. Cutting, cabbing, color. And there was one other thing, and I'll remember it in a minute. But so what we want to talk about real quick is if you've never worked at Ellensburg Blues before. I know not everybody's going to have a Genie machine like this, but don't forget you can still work them by hand. It takes a little longer. You can work them with wet sandpaper and everything. It takes a while. I've done it though. But when you're working with Ellensburg Blues though, cutting them is important, okay? Cutting, cabbing, and color. So Ellensburg Blues, a lot of people don't believe that they have the lace in them, and they see a lacy agate and they think that it's a African lace or something like that. But Ellensburg Blues have them. It's just been traditional that you don't show those when you're cutting a stone, at least the jewelers that I've spoken with, and they try to get just the clear part of the stone without any of the lace. Now even this stone here, you can see it's got some the fortification lines, or well, they're not water lines, or but so it's got the lines there, the lacing, and a little bit on that side. This stone was part of a seam, and that was pretty much the center of it where it was cut. And so you had this clear section of chalcedony or agate on either side. And so this top part, this is what's slightly more, a lot more desirable for making a stone out of it. Now I've made some stones with the lace, and it made some cabochons with the lace showing and everything. And a lot of people think there's no lace at all, like I said, in Ellensburg Blues, but there is. It's just usually not cut so that it shows. Now this stone right here, this is a seam. You can see on both sides of the pitting, the goethite on this side and on this side. But here's the stone, and so we've got different coloration. We've got this lighter line on the outside and the darker in the center. Same thing over on this end. And if you put a light to these things, it starts to expose some smaller intricacies. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but there's more lacing and everything there. And so one of the things that happens with Ellensburg Blues is that they're not comprised of a single layer of Ellensburg Blue. They're comprised of a few different layers of fluid that went into magmatic fluid and depositing what eventually dried and hardened into an Ellensburg Blue, cooled. And so sometimes some of the layers might be clear, some of the layers might be gray. We talked about this before, and Carl talked about this in Nick Zentner's video as well. So when you're cutting them, you have to be very careful that you don't grind off the blue, because you might be left with clear or gray. And even though it all looks blue, a lot of times the clear sections are taking blue color from the blue agate. So looking at this stone, I put a light to it quite a bit, and I'm pretty comfortable that above the lines that all of this is blue. But there's an interesting thing with this stone. There is can you guys see that right there? There's a dark spot. So you got this dark spot, and I think that it's possibly, it could be some goethite reaching down into it from the exterior, or it could just be where some crystals had formed previously and then it filled in with agate around it, and it's just creating a difference in the lighting as the light goes through it. So going to end up cutting this right in half, right through that dark spot, and exposing it to see, is it something that we can deal with, or is it something that's going to ruin this agate, and the stones are going to be smaller either end. So that's one of the considerations you have to take. One of the things you have to take into consideration. So you can see here, obviously we got this flashlight on it, and it's bringing out some color. Like I said, the plan is to cut that one in half. Now the other thing that I wanted to show you guys is this stone right here. This is so we've been looking at this stone, and it looks really neat. It's a beautiful stone, but when you start to look at it even closer, you see the line going there. All right, you guys, so I can see the fracture, and I'm going to color the parts that I can see and draw it on. So I know there's a fracture right there, and then on this side there's also a fracture, and I can see it going along here. And so I'm going to mark this part because I can see it. And let's see. Trying to put a light through it from behind, and I can't really see. A little bit comes out here, so, and then the continuation of the fracture on this side. So I had looked at this stone before, and I can see going this way. I know this right here, this section here is complete. It's one big piece. There's no fractures in it. So there's a couple of things taken into consideration. So when you're going to cut your stone, one, if there's some kind of inclusion in there that's going to ruin the stone. So like I said, this one's right in the center. And if I thought, well, maybe I can make 3 stones out of this, and I cut it right here and cut it right here, and then that inclusion in the center completely ruins this center stone, now I have 2 smaller stones. So I'm just going to take a chance and cut it in the very center, not taking a piece out of the center, but just cutting it in the center, and see if I can get 2 slightly larger stones. If that inclusion is there, I can grind it out. So, and the same thing here is if you don't plan for these fractures, I mean, you might cut it right here thinking you're going to get a stone right here, but then you got a fracture going right through it. Now, Ellensburg Blues, you know, sometimes they're hard to find, sometimes they're difficult to get a hold of, or at least slightly more expensive than other agates. And even if it's got a fracture, you might just want to make jewelry out of it, especially, you know, if you're making it for friends and family and they're not going to care and you can't really see the fracture, then there's no big deal. Make something out of it. But I kind of want to take the fractures out. I'm not selling them. These are for friends and family, but I kind of want to take the fractures out and live up to that challenge and give it a shot just to see, you know, see if I can do it. So Andrew and I have both been cutting on these, and it's fun, and it's also a little nerve-wracking, you know, just because you know that you don't want to grind away too much. So anyway, so what we're going to do now is we're going to cut this one in half, and then we may cut this one down that fracture line, just split it right in half, and then we'll have some smaller pieces to deal with, and we'll come back in and we'll show you how we work them on the cabochon machine here, this little Genie from Diamond Pacific. So it's a lot of fun, but like I said, if you don't pay attention, you can mess up your stone before you even start working on this. You can cut it wrong, or you can cut the color right out of it. But then once you get working on this, you can also grind the color right out. So anyways, stick around, we'll be back. Hey everybody, so I took some rubbing alcohol and took the lines off of it. I think we've got a little different lens here now, so we might be able to see it. And there's ink into that fracture now. Can you see it, Andrew?
Yeah.
Okay, so that fracture is going along here, guys. So I'm just going to mark it again, and I'm going to go out and cut along that, and cut the other side here too, if I can find it. So it joins about like that. So I'll double check with the light here in a second, but we're going to go out and cut this stone in half roughly and see what we got left to work with. So I'll double check to make sure that's where I know this fraction's there, and then the fracture, and there's another one shooting off to the side I can see right here. So we'll double check, and we're going to cut it, and then come in and do a little work on it, let you see it. Alright, so there's no gooutside in there, it's just the formation that was creating that shadow, which is cool because we'll get two bigger stones out of this. Alright, it breaks my heart to cut this one, but we're going to do it. you guys, isn't that beautiful? Pretty gorgeous. Alright, I'm gonna make a smaller stone about that big. Alright, I'm gonna cut this one. This is a big stone. That's a really big stone. Probably could split it in half, but that'd be thin. You get too thin, you guys, you lose your color. So I'll leave it thick like that. I got water line here. I'm going to cut the base off. There's a fracture. Little First Creek gray water line. See a difference in some color there. Let's see without this. Still some difference. Alright, well, make our way back inside. right, everybody, so as you saw, I went from cutting to grinding each level, all from 80 grit all the way up to 14,000, and then I went over to the felt wheel and used cerium oxide. So that's not a standard shaped stone. I kind of like making them really high domed like this sometimes, and since we're going to be doing our own bezels and our own settings, we don't have to go by standard shaped stones, and I like cutting them a little bit thinner because they have better color that way. Remember, the thinner the stone, the less color there is. So the only other thing that I mean, I hope you learned from what we did. I'm not an expert jeweler, so I'm sure there's going to be plenty of jewelers out there that are laughing and shaking their heads and thinking, oh, what a hack job. But that's okay, I've been called worse. But the other thing that I'd like to do is we're going to go through and test a bunch, every one of these that has an open bare base to it or has been uncut and untrimmed, and we're going to test the hardness of them and see if we can find any Ellensburg Blue that is over an 8 in hardness, because I haven't found one yet. I've tested quite a few. So right now, if you guys have one, let me know. Put it in the comments. I've asked before, but I'd kind of like to know, anybody got one that tests over an 8? Anyways, we'll be back in a second. Okay, everybody, so here we're going to do some hardness testing, and I've got the this is a 7 and then this is an 8 in the Mohs scale. So this is the other half of the stone that I just got done working. This is that bigger stone I just got done cutting. This is a stone that I cut last week. This is another stone I cut last week. Here's a nice darker, almost cornflower, it's pretty much cornflower stone. So then we got these two right here, and then this right here, almost blue in some lights, but it's more gray than anything. This is a First Creek agate that I cut, and this is maybe a First Creek, I believe this is a First Creek agate nodule as well. So then here's a waterline from Upper First Creek, and then here is just a chunk of agate from Red Top. Okay, so when I tested some of this stuff before, it all tested the same, Ellensburg Blues and non-Ellensburg Blues. But let's see what happens. So I'm going to take this number 7 and see if we can get a scratch on this. So we didn't get any scratches. We transferred metal. There's no scratch. So no scratch on the water line. No scratch on the Red Top agate. No scratch on the First Creek nodule. And then here's another First Creek. No scratch. So none of these scratched with a 7. Okay? None of these scratched with a 7. None of these are Ellensburg Blues. None of them scratched with a 7. Okay. So here's an Ellensburg Blue. It does not scratch with the 7. Here's this nice dark Ellensburg Blue. Just skates over it. Does not scratch. There's another blue. I don't really have any flat surfaces, but it's not digging in, you guys. So, no scratch. Another Ellensburg Blue, no scratch. This guy right here, beauty. No scratch. This little guy right here, whoops, too small to hold. No scratch, too damn shiny to even catch hold. Sorry guys. No scratch. Okay, so none of these agates scratched with a 7, so that means what, they're equal to or greater than 7. So 7.5. Every one of these. This no color gray agate from Red Top, this gray slight blue agate from First Creek, this nodule from First Creek, this waterline from Upper First Creek, all tested the same as Ellensburg Blues with the 7. So here we have the 8. Okay, now I'm expecting some scratches to come out of this. Okay, we got a definite scratch on the water line with the 8. You see it? Right through there. Okay, so let's check this one here. Definite scratch. Definite scratch on the first creek. Okay, first creek nodule. Scratch on that light part. So let's check the dark part. Scratch, big old scratch. Okay, it's gray from red top. Yeah, scratch. Okay, let's check these blues. So that bit in right there. Yeah, okay. That blue scratched. Okay, this blue scratched. That blue scratched. Huh, let's see here. Okay, this one scratched it. Didn't want to scratch as easy though. Okay, that scratched. Yep, this one scratched. Definite scratch. Okay, you guys, so all of these agates pretty much scratched the same. This one here seemed to have been a touch denser, but it still scratched eventually. It put up a little fight though, but all of these scratched with an 8. None of them scratched with a 7. And like I said, I got red top grays, red top grays, First Creek grays, and First Creek waterline. And so none of them scratched with a 7. All of them scratched with an 8. So, although like I said, this one put up a little fight. So that's interesting. Let's try one more time. Yeah, it scratches. It's definitely scratching. So anyways, guys, if you've got one in Ellensburg Blue that doesn't scratch with an 8, I'd sure like to know about it. All right, so guys, hopefully this video helped you a little bit if you're just starting out working on a cab machine or something like that. I know we didn't do a lot of talking through it and just a lot of watching, but one big thing that I can tell you is that you never want to let the stone stop. You always want to keep it moving, because once you let it stop, you get a flat spot. And I actually let it stop a little bit in one point and I got a flat spot, so I had to take down a lot more agate. I was trying to keep a higher dome and was going to take the bottom off, but I ended up having to take a little more off the top because I got a flat spot. Anyways, hope you liked what you saw. Hope maybe you learned something. If you could like and subscribe, we'd appreciate that. Hit the alarm bell for notifications. So appreciate you watching, and don't forget, Andrew,
go outside.
Go outside, everybody. Find some Ellensburg Blues.